Hey everybody. I thought I would have a cigar with you. And because of Veterans Day coming up, that maybe I would share my Marine Corps experience because I think mine's pretty unique. Um, it's not very typical. Um, but so I'm gonna have this Padron handmade. I'm really not sure of anything else about it. This is part of a pack that my buddy Jerry Welch, what's up, dude, sent me. And I haven't had a cigar since I received this awesome package that came with this Enfuego tobacco shop sweet lighter. Um, I'm a little worried it's a little too humid in the humidor, but give it a shot. So I say, my Marine Corps experience was probably pretty unique compared to maybe what. Look at that. That's a pretty bold cigar, and kind of perfect for a kind of a chilly day. Um, anyway, I think my Marine Corps experience is a little unique in the sense that I joined real late. Um, I always wanted to be a Marine and almost joined out right after high school and kind of regret not doing that because I really felt like very strongly about doing that, um, but kind of got talked out of it by my parents. Um, who were, they're just looking out for me. But my dad was Marine, my brother is Marine, cousins, a lot of my cousins Marines, disciples are Marines, and I was no exception. It was kind of in our blood, as we say, it was in our blood, and we let it flow. Um, and we even have, I think I'm what do you call it, son of the Revolutionary or something. We had a lieutenant. There was a lieutenant disciple in the Revolutionary War. Um, so I think it even goes back further than just the living extended family we have here. But I read all these war books and whatnot, and always wanted to be a Marine. That seemed to be the what's more badass than being a Marine? I mean, the Navy SEALs, you got them, but then for me, I was like, but I have to grow that stupid mustache. That's how I thought at the time, anyway. Um, but I got talked out of it, and then I kind of was like, went down a bunch of different paths, and was into music, and I was in a bunch of bands, and um, traveled the world, and you know, life happens, that kind of thing. Um, but then I was in my 30s then, and I'd always regretted it, and I think this is where it's a little unique. I think it gets even more unique as I go on. Um, and maybe my little testimony on the Marines will be interesting or maybe informative to others because it wasn't like all like badass warrior stuff. It was a lot of stupid stuff. Um, but all stuff I couldn't exchange for anything, and there's no regrets there, and certainly very proud, very proud to be a Marine. So we'll get into all that. But so I mean, I went through down a number of paths, and then ended up having a business, and our business went bankrupt, and I was in a pretty dark place financially, I would say. I guess spiritually, maybe emotionally. It was tough, but but it was kind of like the perfect opportunity to look into this some more. But I didn't even know. I was like, can I even join this late at 30? Most kids join like do ROTC in college, or they join right after college if you want to become an officer, or they join right out of high school for the enlisted corps. So, um, so I had some reservations about doing it so late in the game, but I also was like, life had life was not going great, and I think it was because of a lot of indecision. And so I'm like, I just need to make a decision and let's just go for it. So anyway, long story short, I found out that you can go in to officer candidate school um, with an age waiver. And that was really my only chance because I was approaching 32, and 32 was the oldest you could join with an age waiver. So I like barely made it in. Um, and then went to officer candidate school. I don't think like a lot of people don't join the Marines at, like I said, at that age, or like nobody does. If anything, I met guys my age at officer candidate school, but they were already enlisted. So a lot of guys will do enlisted for 20 years or maybe less than that, but or that much, and then they decide they want to go transition to an officer after they get like a college degree or whatever. That's really the only thing between enlisted and officer is a college degree, um, which is kind of stupid, especially these days. But that's just how it is. So a lot of enlisted folks will go and they'll get the college degree using the GI Bill while they're active duty or reserves or whatever. But then they'll go to officer candidate school and become an officer. And those guys were my age, maybe, or some very rare instances, sometimes older. But there was a whole different ballgame. They knew exactly what was going on, and whereas I was, green to all this stuff. So I get to officer candidate school, OCS, and that is in Camp Lejeune. No, it's not. It's in Quantico, Virginia. I ended up at Camp Lejeune a little bit later, which I'll get into in a minute. Um, so go to Quantico, Virginia. That's where the FBI is too, and Marines do a lot of their training there. Skipping ahead, but officer can school. Then for me and all officers, they go to the basic school. You kind of do that. The officer corps does that all together, and then you break off into your military operations specialty, your MOS. And for me, it was infantry. So infantry also is in Quantico, where someone else, say, I don't know, artillery school might go to friggin', I don't know where they go, some army base in Kansas or something terrible. Um, but I was infantry. Anyway, I'm jumping ahead. But officer can school, at first when I got there, with all the yelling and all the screaming, I just felt like I loved it actually. I loved it. And I felt like I knew what was coming. Um, this is great. Everybody else is freaking out. I think this is awesome. Um, so I thought I was going to be kind of a top dog there just the first couple days because I just, for some reason, I felt very confident and I felt like I was born to do it. But that quickly changed. Um, and the worst thing that can happen to you at officer candidate school and probably boot camp, if you're enlisted, you go to boot camp. If you're trying to be an officer, you go to officer candidate school. In both, I imagine you definitely don't want to get the attention of your, in my case, sergeant instructors. Um, so I don't remember all their names, but I will never forget. And he's certainly gone up the ranks since then. But back then, it was Staff Sergeant McCloskey. We called him the Antichrist, because he was like pure, pure aggression, pure. You're scared to death of him. And it's funny because in hindsight, all of us who had him, we felt like we had the best platoon. Um, and we were very grateful. He was known throughout that whole class. Everybody was scared to death of him, and he was our platoon, first platoon. Um, and he would just light you on fire, not literally, but yelling, spit in your face, not like spit, but when he's yelling at you. Um, and he was terrifying, absolutely terrifying. And I think everyone to this day would say how grateful they were to have him. One, just for the stories. It was just, he was so, it's so funny. At Officer Candidate School, if I skip ahead again, it's just something you look back on and it's just hilarious because people are always messing up, and there's just so many moments where they're tearing you down. And where I was going is I thought I was good to go the first couple days. It's I think it was, what is it, 10 weeks? Maybe good for the first week or two. And then I don't know what it was. I'm not really sure what set it off, but I started getting his attention. And because I didn't feel, I didn't have the confidence that I had the very first couple weeks. And I think there'd be a moment, but I really had a hard time with like just, I was tough, I think, and I was in shape. I was very in shape. So I had all that down at the time, but I couldn't get my brain around, like, you have to say candidate disciple request permission to, um, all that stuff. You're just a candidate. So you had to say things in a certain way to every time reminding yourself you're nobody, you're just a candidate. And then, and you had to address everybody by the right title, which there was like a long, long title, like staff sergeant instructor. I can't even say it now. Sergeant instructor, staff sergeant McCloskey. So I'd be like, candidate sample request permissions from sergeant instructor, staff sergeant McCloskey, and I just kept messing stuff like that up, um, and I got his attention. And he definitely came after me. So that's the thing. If you look like you might not meet the cut, it's all about, being evaluated there. And I think he didn't think I should be an officer. I'm just gonna say it. And so he went after me. Um, and gave me a hard time. And there's all kinds of stories, but um one hike I didn't have my patrol backpack all zipped up, and he was like it was a run through the woods, and he was taking all the stuff out of it and throwing it on the ground, and he'd make me go back and get it, and he made me carry other people's who were dropping stuff, and I was like, I had to carry all this gear while we're running, and I had to lead the cadence. Um, and I remember my parents came out, well, the first time we had Liberty, and we got lunch or something, and I was like, "Look, guys, I don't know if I'm gonna make it." I was like, I'm not gonna give up, but I don't know if I'm gonna make it. I don't think this guy's after me, and I think it's like his mission in life to make me quit. Um, and And so it was miserable. It was absolutely miserable. I mean, he was always in my face. He called me, well, I called him the number of people of this, but the drill terrorists, we have to do these drills on the left leg, arch, and, get all these moves down with our rifle and all this stuff. And, I thought I got pretty good at it, but I would still mess up. I mess up enough to notice, and he just would go ballistic because he wanted to win. We would have these there at the end. We had a competition, and I even remember I screwed something up. It was just this little thing, but I could just see him go like this and just get so bad. It was actually, now that I think of it, it still hurts that I messed that up because I practiced my butt off. Anyway, so it was like his mission in life to get me to quit, and I just, I wouldn't quit, um, and toughed it out. And I want to think anyway, at the end that he respected me. At the end, he has to salute me, um, and he did it. He stood freaking locked body and saluted me, and I later ran into him. Well, a couple times I ran into him, but later ran into him at a Marine Corps ball. And I was certainly much looser then, but he was doing security, and I went up to him. I had to, and he was totally, totally cool and totally different person. But then he did say, he leaned into me. He's like, "Yeah, me and my friend here were just wondering how far we could throw a lieutenant through a window." It's just like, there he is, there he is. So anyway, that was an experience I wouldn't trade for the world, but it was very challenging for me, but I got through it. And then it's off to TBS, the basic school. Basic school was a lot different. I didn't feel targeted at that point, but it was still tough. You're learning all the new language. You're learning new military language. Um, I didn't prep for it. I didn't prep for officer can school as much as I should have. I read some books, but um, just things simple like how you draw a battle plan or a patrol plan, and like just all the symbols that go on it. Like we'll be having machine guns here, the platoon here with the rectangle with an X on it, and battalion here. All that stuff I had to learn very quickly. And you're at the basic school for like 6 months. And it was while officer can school was miserable because it was summer and it was so hot. The basic school was through winter and freezing. And, you're out on these, um, sometimes a week at a time. Do we do a week? At least 3 days at a time, maybe a week, out in the woods digging fire holes, um, in like, frozen ground, uh, and just totally miserable. But I had the best. Then there, it's not just a captain as it's your staff platoon commander. Because you're still in training basically. You're a Marine now. Um, in fact, it's funny. Right after officer can school, everybody got Marine Corps tattoos. I didn't get one, but I mean, they earned the right to get the tattoo. But I always thought it was pretty silly. You hadn't done anything yet. A lot of guys had tattoos. Anyway, so the staff's platoon commander, I love this guy. His name's Captain Rookie. We all adored him. He was uh he was a little crazy. Um but I think that's part of the reason we loved him. And he was a warrior. I mean, he was in war and he was all the stuff. All the stuff you dream of if you dream of being a hero, you know. If you have dreams of being a warrior in battle, like that guy was in war. He was a leader and a great leader. Um, so we just were guru over him, adored him, and he was hilarious. He was so funny. And he was another guy. You didn't want to get on his bad side, or you didn't want to give him anything to make fun of you for because he was so good at it. Um, I found that I loved him, and I kept in contact with him a little bit even afterward, but I it was still pretty miserable. Um, you're still training, so it's still like austere conditions, and it's not the freaking Air Force, you know. No offense, Air Force, you're veterans too. Um, in fact, that's not fair to say because I don't even know what your training is. But it was in camp. Let's just say that. You learn how to do the op order. Um, you're leading patrols, you're leading attacks and stuff like that. You're leading defenses. Um, all that stuff. It sounds kind of motivational and fun, but it's not. It's just because it's miserable. It's freezing, and it's a lot of work. And again, I had to really work hard at that to get it down. But I think I broke my ribs. We had to fight each other and stuff. Um, and I remember I had to fight this guy, and I could just tell he'd never been in a fight before. And I was just he was he was a little standoffish, and I thought I was like, oh, I'm killing this guy, and I just went after him. And then I lost steam, and then he just started pummeling me, and I broke 3 ribs. And it was miserable. But one reason I love there's some memories that stand out from there. And I'm just sharing this to add color, especially if you're thinking about joining or something like that, or if you're just curious about it. But I broke 3 ribs, and then I remember going to Captain Rugi. I'm like, we had to go to the range and qualify at the range the next day. So that means your rifle, you know, I forget the distances now, but up to like 300 meters away, and you're in the prone position, so laying down. I was in excruciating pain, and I remember going to his office and saying, "Hey, the doctor," because I had to go to medical. The doctor gave me a chit, piece of paper that said I'm relieved of doing any of that. I remember him looking at it and say, this is really just a recommendation. He's like, don't. I mean, it's up to you though. You can decide. Do you want to go or do you not want to go? And I said, I did not want to disappoint this guy because I just loved him. And I thought he wanted me to say go. I didn't want to go at all, but I said, yeah, I want to go. Totally lied just to pretend like I was tough. But that was interesting because that got me like a lot of credibility, not only with him, but with his boss, the major of our company, golf golf company. Forget his name. He was like a Black Hawk pilot, and he liked Tool, which I thought was cool, but I didn't like him otherwise. Forget his name. Anyway, so the only good thing about that is that I got a lot of credibility with him and the company, the company commander, because they thought that was badass to qualify for the rifle range. This is something I have to wear for a long time, whatever I get, um, with 3 broken ribs, and I end up getting what they call the pizza box for rifle, which is qualifying, but it's the lowest you can get. There's expert, sharpshooter, and pizza box. But with 3 broken ribs, I think I felt lucky to get that, but I did not like wearing that pizza box, especially if you're infantry. It's sort of like a little bit of a badge of shame. Um, it should be expert. Now in rifle, or excuse me, in a pistol, I got expert because I'm just standing up and I didn't destroy my ribs. But this cigar is great. Thanks again, Jerry. I really like it. It's a little darker than I normally like, but I'm loving it right now. So onward and upward, the basic school, and so then um, somewhere along the way we find out our MOS. I can't remember. Maybe it was officer candidate school. Maybe it was that far back. I always wanted to be infantry. My brother was infantry. My dad was a bombardier navigator, but I didn't feel like going to school for that stuff, flying. Um, and it's not something I'm particularly good at. That kind of education, technical stuff. Intel sounded cool, but I don't think I was smart enough. Um, and so infantry, that's like, those are the warriors. That's the grunts, you know. And so that's what I wanted. Um, and got it. And then it's off to for those who got infantry 0302, it was off to Infantry Officer Course, which for that school, that's still in Quantico, Virginia. Um, and talk about insane. Actually, you know what? It's funny, like, first rule of Fight Club, you don't talk about Fight Club. Infantry Officer Course is that same way. And I remember too, I read One Bullet Away, um, which is what Generation Kill is based on, a HBO show. That was pretty awesome. But um, in that book, he talks a lot about Infantry Officer Course. And I remember the instructors um, hated that guy because you're not supposed to talk about it. It's all supposed to be very secret, and you're supposed to. Part of the whole training is surprise and being outside your comfort level. So I think I'll stay true to that and not talk too much about it. Um, but it was just very austere, and just like all of them, like officer candidate school, the basic school, there was like a crucible type of event. All of it. Um, as the further you go, especially infantry officer course, it was just just way more intense, um, and way, way, way challenging. Anyway, so I'm not going to talk about the specifics. I'm also having a hard time remembering many of them, but I remember I really got down the op order then, briefing the op order. A funny story there, at least I think it's funny. After I gave it, the instructor took me aside. He's like, "Hey, dude, you nailed it. You got it all. That was great. It was clear. You practiced it." He's like, "Tell me where you're from." And I was like, "Oh, grew up in Southern California." He's like, "Yeah, I thought so. Hey, try to lose that accent." He's like, "That's the only criticism." I guess I was like, "So, like, yeah, so like we're gonna be like right here, and we're gonna lay suppression and fire, and then like from over here, we're gonna, flank from the right." Guess I was talking like that, which I still talk like that somewhat. So that was kind of funny. But anyway, that was graduating that. I might have never felt prouder in my life to get through that. I think that's the most important thing from my experience. That was very tough, um, for different reasons, because it was supposed to be tough. Um, and so I was really pretty stoked getting through that. I really felt proud of myself. Yeah, it was a great accomplishment. So that graduation, family comes out. It was really actually quite gratifying to celebrate that. Um, then what? Then what happens? Oh, then you get your unit. Then you get deployed to your, excuse me, not deployed, but to sent to your unit. You have a choice. Um, there's really only three choices, I think. What is it? Camp Pendleton. That's what everybody wanted because it was in San Diego, and secretly I wanted that too. But I put it as my second choice because my whole family was on the East Coast, so I put Camp Lejeune. That's where we get to North Carolina. But I was hoping that they would say, "Ah, no, we got too many people there. You're going to Camp Pendleton." But I got my first choice, even though I secretly wanted my second choice. I can't remember what my third choice was, or if there was a third choice. But joined 3rd Battalion, 8th Marines, um, infantry battalion in Camp Lejeune. You go there, it's terrifying. At least I thought it was, because this is where you meet the men you're going to lead as a platoon commander. Um, but before that, it kind of was a bummer because for a number of reasons. But my grandmother died, and so they let me go to her funeral. But what really sucked about that was they had too many lieutenants, so I didn't get a platoon right away. So I end up helping in what's called the S3 shop and doing operation stuff. So when you're not deployed in theater, S3 is basically coming up with training operations and helping with the training operations. And so that kind of sucked. So I didn't have my own platoon yet. I think pretty soon, pretty quickly though, I did get mine. Um, and I believe it was first platoon again. And that's a terrifying, not terrifying is too strong a word, but you're nervous about that because you're meeting these Marines. All of them have been to war, most of them anyway. And you're this, greenhorn, as they talk about in Officer and a Gentleman. I think they say that in there. But you're new. You're, a shiny little lieutenant, second lieutenant. Um, and so how do you earn these guys respect? Which is kind of the first thing you don't want to do. It's like you don't necessarily have to earn it the first day, right? You want to demonstrate that you care about them, and that respect happens over time. But I went to them and basically just said, "Hey, I've learned some things. I'm sure you guys can teach me some things. So let's learn together. It's good to, and I'm just sharing it. We got this training, that training coming up, blah blah blah." Um, and right after they all tackled me, which is what was awesome because that was first platoon's tradition in this great Marine Corps. So they tackled me. They tackled me hard, like I was sacked, like I was Geno Smith of the Raiders. Um, but it felt great. I was like, hey, what a better way to get started? Like, it's like we'll respect you because we have to, but we're going to tackle you now. But I love those guys, and I almost like love them immediately. You have your hard chargers, and then you have some guys that have trouble getting into trouble, and other guys that are maybe are lazy, but and you have to get on. Um, but you, for the most part, you're their advocate. The guy that you rely on the most is the platoon sergeant. So my first platoon sergeant was Josh Griffin. Josh, he's my Facebook friend. If you're out there, um, this one's for you. And he was a sergeant. Normally, it would be like a staff sergeant as a platoon sergeant, and I'm the platoon commander. This guy was a sergeant, but he was awesome, and I love him. He's like a giant now. I remember he was skinny there because he would go in and out of pumping serious iron. Um, so he was skinny when I knew him, but he was a great leader. The men like totally respected him. Me and him had great rapport. I thought he was awesome. But then he went to sniper school, so I did a new one, and then I got oh shoot, what's his name? I apologize if he's watching this. A staff sergeant, um, that I'm sure went up in the ranks since then. I don't remember his name, but he was awesome too. Loved him. The guys, he was a little more he was a little more harsh on the guys. He was a little more disciplined. Some guys had heartburn, but he was still great. He still kind of, The ones who had problems with it were little babies about it, but I thought he was great. We again got along. He's one of those guys that had these big trucks, big wheels, monster truck kind of driving guy. It's on the tip of my tongue too, what his name is. Anyway, so that was a great experience. We did a lot of training together, blah blah blah. All right, then I get injured. So in infantry officer course, something happened to my shoulder. We're carrying around 250 pounds or more, which sounds insanely ridiculous, but it's true. Yeah, hopefully they've changed this since then. But and then you're carrying around like the base um for a 240 or actually a 50 cal. It was a 50 cal. Um, which adds another 50 pounds or whatever. And I just remember something happened to my shoulder. Um, I didn't know what exactly all the way. It just hurt. And then, sure enough, um, later, it was injured and I found out a nerve died, and I got a wing scapula. I was actually deployed soon after. The 3-8, my battalion just got back from war. Um, and I think it was Afghanistan. Um, Maybe it was Iraq, but and so we had some time. We had a break, and so they deployed a couple lieutenants, me and a couple other guys to the Republic of Georgia, the country, to train their army. Um, and there, I remember my commanding officer wrote back to our battalion commander and said, "Hey, Seipel's arm is screwed up. My scapula was just like jutting out. It was really gross, actually. But I was still could move. I just couldn't do pull ups very well. I was like emphasizing my left arm or whatever too much. But um, anyway, we got through that deployment. Republic of Georgia was awesome. That was a really unique experience too. Not a lot of people have leading Marines to train their army while Russia spied on us. They'd have spy planes. We allowed to get indoors certain times of the day when the Russian spy planes would fly above, and training guys who had fought pretty effectively against Russia, who took Russia on, uh, contrary to probably what they should have done. So that was good. And then came back to the unit. And then we're training and getting ready for a MEU. My arm got worse. My shoulder and arm got worse to a point where I couldn't lift my arm anymore. So, basically, I was told that because of my arm, I couldn't go on this MEU, a Marine expeditionary unit, and it really was a bummer for me. It killed me. Um, but I couldn't you know pick my arm up, and I guess I got it. And I was really worried I was going to get medically separated, but I didn't somehow. Um, and after a while, I went to physical therapy and all that kind of stuff, and that didn't help. But after a while, I think the nerve just grew back, so it got to a point where I could was mobile at least a little bit to pass it off. Um, but during that time, they deployed, and they ended up going to Afghanistan too, which was like really, um, it was really, it was just a bummer not being there with the guys, especially going into theater. So I was in charge back home as a company commander of what they called the force generation element, which is a nice way to say the remain behind element. So this was also very unique because really, what's in the remain behind element? Folks who get wounded in war and come back and need to be treated. Um, and I'll go into that maybe in a minute. It was really sad, some of these things. Um, and guys who were facing legal problems and were going to get legally separated from the Marine Corps, disciplinary issues, drug issues. Um, you know, jokingly, the creme de la creme of uh, of the Marine Corps, which is really um, challenging. All these guys thought they could do whatever they wanted, and I made them go to classes. I taught classes. Um, we did a lot of volunteer work and stuff. I ended up getting a letter of accommodation or a letter of appreciation from Colonel Smith at the time, who's now a general. Is he the commandant? I think he is the commandant now. That was interesting interactions with him, and to get to know him. He really appreciated me because I was actually doing something with the remain behind element. Um, um, where I don't think many folks normally would do that. And I did ran that with Gunny Shockley. Gunny, if you're out there, actually, I'm sure you got promoted too, but he was a awesome dude. Still friends with him on Facebook anyway. He was great. He taught me a lot of good stuff. Anyway, but it was like, it was some of it was babysitting, some of it was doing some good work, but it was unique. It wasn't, again, not everybody has a hard charging, you know, experience in the Marine Corps. Again, kind of back to the original point of um, this testimony. The most meaningful thing that I did while on active duty, I think, was I led a Navy Cross ceremony for the late Corporal Ouellette, who was killed in action for his team. And I led a Navy Cross ceremony, which was terrifying. Again, I told you how I was in drill, but this was like the Secretary of the Navy was there, and his family was there, and so it was something I did not want to screw up. And we just practiced the crap out of it and nailed it. And I was very, very pleased that we didn't screw that up because that was a very solemn and important event. And so I was real happy that despite the tragedy, that he was honored appropriately. Um, and I did a lot of work with the family relationship officer. Every battalion gets one of those, the FRO. So he was there with me for that. Mark, if you're out there, he was a great guy. He really cared about Marines. And the other thing that was very solemn about that time was visiting wounded warriors and Walter Reed, one of our sergeants who was a platoon sergeant that got blown up. It was really, really in a bad way. Um, so we went to visit him with his family and the fro. So that was a lot of lessons learned just in how to be in very, very serious situations like that. Where you're dealing with families of loved ones who've gotten hurt real bad or killed. Um, so that was not fun. It was, but it was. I'm glad don't regret it, or I'm glad that I had the experience. Let's say. Um, and then my arm was started feeling better. I could move it a little more, and then it was like, what do I do now? And found an opportunity to go to Liberia. So Liberia was my last and final deployment. And again, that was a training deployment where we trained Liberian soldiers in the AFL, the Armed Forces of Liberia. And that was great. It was interesting and fascinating, and a lot of interesting stories being in Liberia. But the greatest thing about that was we had a lot of extra time. That wasn't great, but Some of us volunteered. So I volunteered to teach classes at the school for the Armed Forces of Liberia's children, the soldiers' children. And that's where I met Isaac, who I partnered with later to form Sustain Liberia, which is a vocational training program in Liberia that still goes on to this day. We started it in 2012. I led it for till 2024, and then I stepped aside and gave the reins back to them, which was always the point. So that was a really great thing, I think, that came out of that to start that nonprofit. Um, uh, it all started because we raised money over while we were over there to get chairs for their school because kids were like walking miles with their chair from home because they didn't have chairs. So we got a local carpenter to make us, I don't know what it was, 500 chairs or something. Uh, I think this is out. Um, so that was a great experience. At least doing something good. The training was decent. I got to know a bunch of Army Reserve guys that were there. It was a joint force, task force. And it also got hairy over there. There was an election, and we had to, no kidding, set up guards to guard at their Department of Defense over there. So you had, no kidding, guards walking with guns that were responsible for um, walking the walls of the Department of Defense because election time was a little hairy there. Anyway, but all positive. Um, and then came back and then got on terminal leave and synced back up with the family. Um, saved a bunch of money because of the deployments. Then joined government consulting. So that was the other thing I would think I would say about my experience in the Marine Corps is that you get secret clearance, and then it's not hard to get top secret clearance, and so I was able to get um, top secret clearance and SCI and all that stuff from being in the Marines, and then also getting hired at Deloitte first, and now I'm at BAE. But um, so that was all that box. Just being a veteran, just by serving, was a huge green card or a huge. It opened a lot of doors for career wise. Being an officer in the Marines. And so I think that's how I got into Deloitte. I don't know how. I still don't know how I got into Deloitte. I think that was it's not easy to get there. I think I was a check in the box because I was a veteran. Um, and so anyway, I learned a lot there. I don't want to get into government consulting. It's boring. But I think the point being is that serving in the military did open up a lot of doors for me. And so that was one. That's not why I got into it, but that was definitely a great result, an output of it. Um, to get a friggin' respectable job, you know, um, and you need that kind of stuff if you're gonna meet a good woman, start a family, all that great stuff. So I attribute all of that to the Marines. The trajectory of my life took a dramatic and positive turn because of the Marine Corps. Um, so I give the Marines all the credit. I'm a proud Marine. I always will be proud to be a Marine. Once a Marine, always a Marine. Um, yeah, we joke with other services and say we're the best. It's just kind of what you have to do at a bar or whatever. But that all anybody who serves, I think, is really is great. Everybody, we all had a sworn oath to defend the Constitution of the United States. Not to defend or to defend government by consent. And you can argue in the last 20 years how much of consent really was a part of our government. Things are taking strange turns that I'm not equipped to totally understand or elaborate, but I'll always cherish the experience of the Marine Corps. I'll always be proud of it, even though my situation was unique. I wasn't going in killing Charlie or whatever. Um, but still very proud of what I did and to be a part of the most prestigious gun club there ever was. So, with that, now you got a testimony and some details about my journey, anyway. Um, being a Marine, being a veteran. We wish all veterans a wonderful Veterans Day. Please remember them. Uh, that's why we do these holidays, right? And I think they're worthy to keep in mind and remember, and to thank them um, for their service. Um, if we didn't have warriors, hard chargers like that, we probably would have not have been able to sustain our country for as long as we have, and hopefully we'll sustain long into the future. Um, so I hope that was interesting. Maybe you had a cigar with me. Thanks again to Jerry for this great Padron. It's awesome, man. Love it. Um, and you guys have a great rest of your week. Until next time. See ya.